Hello, welcome to the Matchbook Betting Podcast, and we're here for the first of 8 Rugby World Cup betting previews. I'm delighted to say back with me after our fun during the Six Nations is my good friend and rugby betting genius, Aidan Sully O'Sullivan. Welcome back.
Konnichiwa, Mr. Bowden. Konnichiwa. Because that won't get boring at all throughout the next 8 podcasts we do. That I'm going to say big and China.
Absolutely not. I mean, a few sort of Japanese references is really just going to hit the spot every time. And I'm even more delighted to say that joining us, fleshing out the team, is from We Love Betting, Mark O'Haire. Welcome to the show, Mark.
Cheers, Alan. Good to be in such illustrious company as yourself and Sully for what should be a fantastic event. Always enjoy the Rugby World Cup. Comes around every 4 years. We have a lot of waiting to do, but really looking forward to it now.
Right, so our first task, obviously, is to try and pull out some winners from the outrights market. So, there's only 3 things that are pretty consistent in life: death, taxes, and New Zealand's favourites for the World Cup. Been a bit of a drift on that, though. We've seen a lot of money coming in for South Africa, a lot of very smart people tipping them up, some equally unsmart people tipping them up too. I don't know where we're going to fall in today's categories, but I mean, what are you guys making of that market, of the early dynamics in that, the way the prices have moved? Do you think New Zealand have come in too much, have gone out too much? South Africa have come in too much? Where are you feeling that those prices are looking at the moment? Sally, talk us through how the markets are looking on Matchbook right now.
Yeah, it's interesting what you say about New Zealand being favourites, but look, 2.5 there right now. It was 2.1 a couple of months ago, and actually odds against a year ago. So this market has obviously been there for a while. 2.5 the All Blacks currently. The Springboks, I think the cat is out of the bag, Alan, with the Springboks, unfortunately. Value has diminished, 5.4, but generally looking at the odds checker grid, you're thinking about 5.0 with the majority of the sports books, but 5.4 here at Matchbook. England, we have seen a lot of warm money for England as well, 5.9, just under 6 to 1 here at Matchbook, very popular bet. Ireland at 12.0. There's been a massive drift on that, of course, in the last couple of months. Back in 2018, towards the end, they would have been second favourites behind New Zealand. Not anymore. Wales at 15.5. A slight drift there, Mr. Bowden, for your home in from 14.0 yesterday. The Rob Howley factor, I don't even believe it's a factor, because we're generally not fans of Rob Howley and that Welsh backline in general. We'll get back to that in a while. Australia 19.0, 37.0. France 66, Argentina 91, Scotland, and there's no point really talking about the rest, is there?
No, absolutely not. And where are we seeing the value in that market then? You mentioned the cat's out of the bag on South Africa a little. I mean, they have shortened considerably over the past sort of 6 months or so. I mean, talk us through your feelings on the top of the market, because if we're honest, that's probably where we're going to see the value.
Yeah, I think so, Al. I mean, look, I'll be honest. I'd love to say I was smart enough even before the Rugby Championship to back to South Africa, because you probably were talking about 7 or 8 to 1 about that point. That being said, I still do believe there is a bit of value on the Springboks here, because I don't think the ratings have adjusted enough to how close they are to New Zealand. And just kind of on that, I mean, you look at their last 3 fixtures, and we're going to say this is a match bet, and luckily enough, obviously this weekend, Springboks and the All Blacks get it on in Yokohama, and currently South Africa are 7-point underdog. Now, in my mind, I think that's a lot closer to 4 right now on a neutral field. So if you're looking at 7 in Yokohama, you're probably saying if this game was in South Africa, be it Johannesburg, Pretoria, wherever, that New Zealand would be a 2-point favourite. And I don't think that's correct. I think it's probably more likely to be a pick'em or South Africa in current form a slight favourite. I mean, if you listen to a lot of podcasts now, there's going to be a lot of podcasts out this week, regards to Rugby World Cup. A lot of pundits are tipping South Africa. So we're not revealing something kind of new here to people, but I think it's a very real move on South Africa. I mean, if you look at what Alistair Coetzee left Rassie Erasmus, when he came into this job about 14, 15 months ago, they're night and day from where they have been then and to where they are now. And they're a very live contender. They're defensively, they're fantastic with Jack Nienaber, the coach there. They lost Spice the Brain, who's the Lions coach, as their attack coach recently enough. I don't think it'll make a massive difference. The only thing I'm worried about is an injury to Andre Pollard at 10, and that's the only issue I have with them. But right now, they're a very real good second favourite. I think they should be about a 7-2 shot, about 4.5, 4.6. So there's still a smidgen of value on South Africa.
Mark, how are you seeing this one? Where do you think the value lies in the top of that market right now?
Well, it's interesting. I've tried to kind of go through previous World Cup champions and see what's entailed to win the World Cup. It's all about experience. You look at finals teams; they have an average minimum of 42 caps per player, average age of around 27 or above, a win percentage through the World Cup cycle of 60% and above. And there's a couple of teams who do hit all the marks: New Zealand, Ireland, Wales, England. South Africa don't, but I think you'd be foolish to write them off after what they've achieved under Erasmus. Such a huge sea change in approach and just a sort of harmonious atmosphere now throughout this camp as well, which wasn't there 2 years ago. I wouldn't be so downbeat on New Zealand. I think the drift is justified. I think they're very fair favourites. I think the price is fair enough as well because, they went off at 2.38 4 years ago, and I think that side was considerably stronger than what they've got at their disposal this time around. I think we've kind of recency bias wants us to beat them up a little bit because they weren't that great in the Rugby Championship. If we actually look at the last two Rugby Championships, they experimented in the year of the World Cup. That's what they do. They didn't win either of them. The same thing happened again this year. The Australia defeat, there's a 1 point difference between the two teams in Perth before the red card as well. There are a couple of issues which I'm not too happy about with New Zealand. I know Hanson's brought in the Barrett Mwanga sort of double partnership, playmaking partnership with Barrett at 15. I think he's left it a little bit too late though. I know it's all about trying to beat the high defensive press where, if you look at all New Zealand's defeats, they do seem to come under similar circumstances. But I'm not sure if he's left enough time to allow that to come to fruition. So, I think there's injuries as well to Borodi Retallick, which is a bit of a blow. But, I still expect, New Zealand and South Africa to come to the fore. South Africa's price is just incredible, really. There were 13s in November, 10s, at the start of July as well, half that price now. But, you can't help but be impressed by what they've achieved. If you look at the games against New Zealand in isolation, they could easily be unbeaten in their last three head-to-heads against them. I think they were pretty fortunate to win in Wellington. Bodie Barrett missing quite a few kicks off the tee in that game, but then blowing that 17-point lead a week later, final 20 minutes against New Zealand wasn't a fair reflection on their game. They should have won that match as well, and then the draw again this year too. So, as Sully says, there is a lot closer. I feel it's a lot closer between the two than the market suggests. You look at the spine of the South African team; it's outstanding. Defensively, they're absolutely fantastic as well. So, and I think the conditions could suit them too. It's going to be pretty humid, pretty damp, greasy conditions. South Africa, out of all the teams, know how to kind of stick it up their jumper and keep it tight. So, I think they're going to be very difficult to beat.
I mean, what's your feeling about the squad depth there? I mean, Sully was mentioning, they have some potential weak points with key injuries. With New Zealand, you always get the sense that the guy coming off the bench can do a job to a similar standard. There's never really quite the same concern there with that. With South Africa, in certain positions they've got good coverage, in others they really don't appear to. I mean, kind of that's my sense anyway. You guys are the experts. What's your view on that? Do you feel like they're a team that is good, well priced at 4 to 1, 5.0, with everyone fit and everyone going well, but with a couple of injuries, that price would look suddenly really bad? Or do you feel like they've got a squad that's capable of carrying them through the World Cup, even if they pick up a couple of key injuries?
Yeah, I think that's the issue of all the teams. Even New Zealand, I'd say. I look at the centre partnership at the moment with New Zealand. It's not the centre partnership that was there 4 years ago or 8 years ago as well. I definitely think there's vulnerabilities about their squad. They have got strength and depth across the park. South Africa, I think the same across most teams. Well, I would say I think South Africa and England have definitely got depth about them, more so than most of the others. As Sully says, Pollard is a key player there at 10. I think they've got fantastic depth at half-back and a scrum half, only taking 3 wingers with them as well, but I think all of them can rip it up. I just think the schedule quite suits them as well. I think I heard Erasmus saying that they're going all guns blazing for the first game against New Zealand. They've essentially then got 2 weeks to prepare for the next big game, and then 2 weeks to prepare for the next big game thereafter as well. So in theory, he should be able to rest and rotate his squad as he sees fit before you get to the knockout stage. And injuries are part and parcel of the game. Every team's going to suffer them, but I just look at the South African team and I think as an opposition player or team or fan, you wouldn't relish playing them. They're that kind of gnarly. They're a difficult beast to get over. So I think you just got to take it in hand and suggest and hope really that they stay fit.
Yeah, I mean, Sully, you were pulling some faces at the 10-15 combination for the Kiwis. I mean, what was your kind of feeling about just pulling up on Mark's point? He's saying that maybe the price is actually fair on New Zealand right now. What's your kind of thoughts on how they're set up to play?
Yeah, look, just on that 10-15, I get it, right? Like, I get it because like on modern day rugby, you probably need that second receiver to come in from 15 or 12, and I just didn't see enough during the Rugby Championship with Mo'unga at 10 and Barrett there at 15 that I was working all that much. I'm a big fan of Mo'unga from what he's done to Crusaders during Super Rugby, but I will kind of add a caveat to that Ryan Crotty wasn't there at 12. No, Ryan Crotty plays at 12 outside Mo'unga at the Crusaders, and I think he's a crucial cog when he gets back in there. But if you looked at the New Zealand centres without Crotty, you had Sonny Bill Williams, you had Anton Leonard-Brown, you had Jack Goodhue and these guys. And they just didn't really strike me as that they were a cohesive unit during the Rugby Championship. In comparison then with South Africa, you've Damien Dalalende and Lukhan Yam, and they were absolutely outstanding, especially defensively. They never let anything through them. So I just do believe that longer term throughout this tournament, if they do go with Bowden Barrett at 15 during the group stages, during the big game, they're obviously their only really big game is against South Africa, that they may just revert back to Barrett throughout the tournament at 10. It's fascinating, but look, I suppose we might as well talk about the Six Nations teams, Al. What do you reckon? We've done a lot of Southern Hemisphere.
Well, I mean, this is the thing. Can we see a Six Nations team winning this? Let me just make it a simple question to start.
Yes, you can absolutely make the case. And look, I think England definitely have all the tools. If they can keep those 4 or 5 key guys fit. Now, obviously, they're missing Mako Vunipola for the first couple of games, but you get him fit. You get George Cruz-Atoje in the pack. You get Billy Vunipola at 8. You have Farrell at 10. And you Tulagi and these guys and Johnny May. I'm telling you now, these are serious players. They're a serious team. And I think they have evolved their game in the past year especially. I mean, I think the Six Nations for them was a bit of a damn squid that lost to Wales. But that first game in Dublin against Ireland, that actually just showed how they can play. And their physicality, their overall gameplay. And even, there was patches there. Obviously, they trounced Ireland, the Twickenham in that friendly a couple of weeks ago. We can't put that much into that. But even, in that loss to Wales, there was definitely sparks in that back line that they're going to be a serious contender here. And they're just in a tough group. And I think in a weird way, it'll probably suit them, is you've got to get tuned in very quickly when you've got Argentina and France in Group C, that you can't really take the off days here. They've got to hit the ground running, and that might actually suit them, but absolutely can make the case for England. Fascinated to hear Mark's thoughts on this stuff.
Yeah, I'm not too strong on England, if I'm honest, just because of what they've got to contend with. Group C is definitely not a group I'd want to be in. If Tonga will want to take their heads off, even if they're going to lose that game by potentially 50, 80 points. But it's not just that. You look at the route to potentially the World Cup final. They've got to overcome France and Argentina in the groups. Then possibly, Australia or Wales, New Zealand or South Africa in the semi-final, then New Zealand or South Africa again in the final. That's an incredibly tough group, or schedule, I should say. I think that's about probably the hardest anyone's going to face in the World Cup. And for that reason alone, I just can't see England at the price they are. It's not for me at all. I'd much prefer looking elsewhere for another Six Nations team like Wales. The market, over the last 2 years has always favoured Ireland over Wales in head-to-head battles, and right here as well. I can't really see it. I think Wales should be a little bit shorter. They have got a tricky pool with Fiji and Australia to contend with, but you'd back them to come through it, and then from the quarterfinals onwards, they'll fancy their chances against an Argentina or a France as well. There's a couple of injuries there to Faletau and Anscombe, which ideally you'd want them in your team. They're talking about this being the best squad they've ever arrived at a World Cup. Well, it could have been even better, but even still, defensively they're a match for any team in this competition, including South Africa. It's just an attack really where they're let down. Only scored 10 Six Nations tries, which was the same as Italy, which is quite incredible really. They're always really low down for passes and carries and meters, breaks, offloads, all the attacking stats you look to, but it's defensively where they tend to kind of get over the line. So I guess they've been playing knockout rugby for a couple of years now under Gatland, so they should be hardened to this. But I'd much prefer taking Wales at probably 3 times the price to England.
Yeah, I mean, it says a lot for the strength of depth in Welsh rugby that it's our best squad ever. We've got 2 fit locks and 1.5 tens. So we'll take what we can get. I mean, looking at some of these other teams, maybe not necessarily you want to be backing them on the outright market entirely, but are there any sort of good back to lay opportunities, do you think, coming out of looking at the pool structures, looking at the qualification routes, as you were saying, Mark? Is there any teams that stand out to you as potential back to lay opportunities?
Well, Wales are one of them, just because I can't see that price standing if they reach a quarter final, because I'd fancy them to win the quarter final. So naturally that's going to contract. But elsewhere, and I know I'm probably going to be, probably cheering this one on my own, really. But Argentina, really, I think they're overpriced. Small trading potential opportunity there. I give them the edge over France. Peculiarly as well in Pool C, the runner-up is probably the slightly softer route towards the final. Now, I don't expect them to win the competition. I don't expect them to get close to the final either, but I think they'll, expect to follow England through. I think they'll fancy their chances against France in an opening game. I guess it's more of a hunt against France than Argentina, because I know there's been plenty of progress made with Galtier coming on board, and the voices and the noises you hear from France are improving, but I can't escape that away record. Against Tier 1 sides, if you exclude Italy, 29 defeats, 1 draw and 2 wins away from home. This century, they've lost 10 of 17 against Argentina. They lost at home in the 2007 World Cup, I think it was 2007 or 11 against Argentina. I look at France, they haven't finished higher than 4th, or they have once in the Six Nations higher than 4th since 2000 or 2007, 2012, I should say, and get my dates mixed up here. But it's just that inability really to kind of come across a settled, cohesive, stable squad. I know they've got the potential, but for me, this team is more about 2023 on home territory to do some real damage. I think Argentina's record is absolutely dreadful. Their form is poor as well, 9 defeats from the spin, only scored 20 points or more once in that sequence as well. And their record since the last World Cup cycle has been poor too. But they do tend to, I think their copybook is much harder really to kind of dismiss compared to France's. They're always up against the bigger teams. They should and could have beaten New Zealand earlier in the summer. They're battle hardened. They've got that cohesion through the club game as well. I just think they've been underrated a little bit here. I think if you look at the kind of head-to-head between the two teams, France and Argentina, France are around 8 to 15 to qualify, which there's no way I'd be getting involved with that price. They're 2-point favourites in the head-to-head going into the opening weekend. I just think the 66 to 1 or around that mark, I think they'll be half that price if they come through this group, and then it's an opportunity to get out. As I say, it's more a kind of nudge against France than Argentina, but I know Sully will disagree with me.
Yeah, the man who watches more French rugby than I think is healthy, to be honest. Sully, what's your view on this?
Well, I watched it until Sky Sports took it away this year, Al, but look, I take Mark's point there, but I will say, and yes, how many times have we looked back in the last couple of years, Alun Bowden, that people come on Twitter and they say, "Oh, France are a great price here for the Six Nations at 20 to 1 and all this kind of price." I will say that there has been improvements. The set piece especially, their scrum is absolutely awesome at the moment. With Jefferson Poirot at loosehead, the captain. He's captain when Gallardo's in there, and Slimani at tight end. And that, if the weather is poor where France and Argentina is playing, I don't have the venue to hand on Saturday, and we'll get into this on the podcast on Friday. I think France have an edge there. They have definitely got an edge in the set piece, and only just looking at the warm-up games, for once they seem to have a defensive system in place, whereas before in the Six Nations last couple of years it was kind of left up to other guys. It was like up to yourself. You want to jump out of the line, you jump out of the line. They actually have a system, and yes, there are a lot of coaches coming on with Galtier coming on board, but I will throw in another carrot there that the introduction of Laurent Lebitte from Racing 92 is a big plus for the French team. And just some of these backs with Dupont at 9, I'm hoping to see a bit of Thomas Ramos come in there as well. Damien Penaud at 14. They have the ability to kind of break the game open, and that France and Argentina game of the opening weekend is essentially their cup final, because you lose that game, you're going to have to somehow beat England. They're probably both going to be double-digit underdogs against England. Maybe that's not the right price, but that is what the general look-ahead lines are. So I think France, if they can get through in that second spot, like Mark said with Argentina, they're going to have some bit of an easier tie. They're going to obviously come up against the winner of the Wales and Australia group, so that's a potentially winning game. They'll be underdogs against both if they do come through, I would suggest. And then you have probably maybe South Africa and Ireland. And I just think at 37.0, yes, it's probably half the price of what Argentina are currently at 66.0, but I do think that is a good trading opportunity because I do fancy France to beat Argentina on the opening weekend.
So yeah, basically pick your favourite, Sully or Mark.
I'd suggest probably going with Mark in the longer term will make you more money, but
there's your recency bias again for your betting performance so far this year, right? I mean, another interesting market got on Matchbook is to reach the final market. There's sometimes a bit of buried value in that. I mean, talk us through some of the prices there, Sully, and then we'll maybe get into some options.
Let me bring it up on the screen here. Yeah, so I mean, obviously, look, New Zealand are going to be pretty odds on here, 1.6. You can back South Africa at 2.45. Remember, they're both going to be in separate sides of the knockout draws if and when they do qualify from their group. England at 3.86. Ireland at 4.9. Wales slightly shorter than Ireland there at 4.8, which just gives you an idea that Wales technically are on the weaker side of the draw, even though their outright price is bigger than Ireland. 6.4 Australia, which is kind of one I kind of like. 11.0 France. 18.5 for Mark's Argentinian side.
Yeah, I mean, one interesting aspect of the Rugby World Cup is we often kind of convince ourselves that all that happens is the top 2 or 3 in the betting smash everyone up, get through to the final, and one of those wins, and it's usually New Zealand. It's not actually the case when you look back at the history of the World Cup. You often get 10 to 1 shots and above in the finals. Is there any potential in this market, do you think, of some flyers, maybe a little bit of value in some of those outside of the top 3 in the betting?
In all honesty, it's just like I said there, it's about looking at the draw. And I do believe that probably the Wales and Australia side is obviously the weaker side because you're thinking that New Zealand will win their group. If England win their group, they're on that side. So we'll just call that side A, for example. And on side B, the winners of Wales and, Australia are in that side with the runners up. And they'll be playing against Ireland, against South Africa, that kind of way. So I'm getting a bit bogged down with that. But I do believe that if Australia can get over Wales, which I kind of have an inkling that they might just be able to do that. Yeah, you're both going to shake your heads with me here. There is a big game in Australia, just as we saw in their big win against New Zealand a couple of weeks ago back in Perth. And if they can just get things right, obviously there's a lot of doubts over there because obviously, you know Israel Folau doesn't seem to know who his 10 is, which is an even bigger worry. He's kind of gone with Christian Lealiafano in a couple of these games. I do honestly believe that Bernard Foley in the long term for this championship anyway, before he heads off to Japan for his club career, is probably the best option there. Maybe even put Tumua at 12. But I do believe, getting David Pocock back in there is a big one for Australia. There's been talks of, he's going to go straight into 7 and Hooper's going to drop out of the team. Could very well see Pocock being played at 8 or 6 and leaving Hooper there, and you have a pretty dynamic back row. So yeah, Australia, if I could probably get a bigger price at the moment, 6.4 is a bit skimpy. If I got 7.0, 8.0, I'd be looking for that one there to reach the final.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, what do you think about this? I mean, it's some nice looking prices if you're a kind of person who would have traditionally been thinking to back the outright on the each way. You're normally getting a third top 2, so you're getting a nicer price than the place price that you would on an each way bet on this market. Anything there that catches your eye?
I don't want to be boring, but I can only really echo there what Sully said. I think Group D, is the one that stands out, just because the way the draw plays out. I think the Australia-Wales game is going to be very, very interesting. I'd give the edge to Wales, but I think all 3 of us wouldn't be at all surprised to see Australia win that game. And then from there on, we saw it 4 years ago. They came into the World Cup without a huge amount of hope. Plenty of people were against them. Back home in Australia, there was mutiny towards the team before they even left, and they ended up in the final. It is possible. Shocks do happen, Australia shocking the rugby world is not a thing really. They always turn up for the World Cup. Just one interesting side note, I did know that 2 of the last 3 finals have featured teams from the same group. Now, if you look at the outright market, New Zealand and South Africa are the top 2. They're going to have to play each other again after this weekend until the final, if the betting plans out as we expected. If you're effectively trying to Dutch New Zealand down or South Africa to win the competition outright, we'll head towards the sort of group winner market where you can get Group B at 1.7. I know it's very, very short, but it's actually a bigger price than if you Dutched the two to win the competition outright. So that's an alternative if you can't look outside the top two. In terms of the kind of to reach the final, there's not a huge amount of juice there that I'm massively interested in. It would be Wales, but with a slight nod to Australia too.
Yeah, I mean, let's move on to the. I don't mean to be this guy, but the pools, not the groups. Come on, lads, get it together. Yeah, let's move to the pool markets. Sully, what are you looking at here? There's a lot to get stuck into, and we're relatively limited with time, so let's try and focus on where the value is.
Yeah, I mean, look, obviously, you look at 3 of the 4 pools; they're very short. I mean, the Irish to win their group 1.35, England are also 1.35, and New Zealand 1.38. Probably the only one that there is kind of a semi-competitive betting heat is obviously again Pool D, Wales at 1.76, Australia at 2.3. I mean, look, even with Pool C, I don't think, as much as I kind of bigged up England there for a while earlier in the recording, I don't think it's probably the worst idea in the world to throw maybe a layoff for there in England. At one point, if you can lay them there like 1.3 less than that. I mean, like they're going to trounce Tonga in the opening weekend. The price won't move that much, but like we said earlier, they're still going to have tricky enough games against France and Argentina. They're not going to be cakewalks. And at that price, it's just they have recent form. The last World Cup, I know there's a lot of water under their bridge. Brand new coaching team. Eddie Jones will have them very much, psyched up to be in Japan. He'll know the lie of the land. They're having coached there for a couple of years. But at that price, in that kind of group, I'd be definitely sticking up a bit of a layoff for there, maybe a 1.3, and hope it gets matched. I wouldn't be, look, at the end of the day, the New Zealand-South Africa group, if you want to back South Africa in the pool game, you might as well just back them on Saturday. In the first game, you'll probably get just as good as price. I wouldn't even be waiting around for the end of the pool to get paid. And very similar Wales and Australia. For me, that's probably more of a pick-em. I just do. I'm a big believer in Australia, how they can get themselves right for a World Cup. That they've never had a bad one yet. And I do believe with Wales, as great as they've been during the Six Nations, attacking-wise, unless they get the ball, get George North running through the middle more and maybe get Josh Adams on the ball, I think that 10, 12, 13 in an attacking sense, that channel is very defunct, and Anscombe is a huge loss there for the kind of game that Warren Gatland wanted to evolve this team into be played. Obviously, Dan Bigger, he's moved to Northampton, brought him on as more of a running 10, but still Anscombe's a huge loss there. And I think Wales, for me, have been the kings of the under during the Six Nations, and they could be kings of the under in the groups games here also.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty intellectually coherent, your view on England, actually, because if you view them as a bit of a sort of a shit or bust team where their A game is absolutely top tier competitive with anything in the world, and their B game, they struggle to beat Scotland, then if they're going to go shell bust in the World Cup, then your view seems pretty intellectually sensible to me. But I mean, Mark, do you see much value outside of Sully's picks there in the pools?
Not a huge amount. Just interesting what you mentioned there about New Zealand, South Africa this weekend, because if you look at the prices, New Zealand are marginally a bigger price to win this group than they were when they drew with South Africa at home 2 months ago, which obviously the game this weekend is at a neutral venue. So on that basis alone, there could be room to oppose them or relay them at least at the odds to win the group. But nothing really major. But I just want to mention Pool A, because Ireland and Scotland will obviously set the tone for this pool on Sunday. I do expect Ireland to find a way despite the injury issues, and then it's down to Japan, Scotland last up. And the last time a Tier 2 team reached the quarters was 2007. But I'm not saying they will, but I think Japan have arguably or quite easily the best opportunity here for a Tier 2 nation to make a splash. I'm not just saying that because they're a home nation, but if you go back 4 years ago, obviously the South Africa win was what everyone mentions, but they were humped by Scotland 4 days later. Now, it's quite easy to sort of write them off because of that, but 4 days after your biggest win in history, probably the biggest shock in world rugby, there's going to be a downturn. I think they lost the second half 3-33 that game. So they missed out on qualification to the knockout stages just on points difference 4 years ago. Now they're at home. They've got arguably an improved squad. The best schedule of all the teams in the whole competition, as you would as hosts. Minimal travel as well. I think they're a real danger for Scotland, especially because they will attempt to kind of outgun Scotland in the same sort of style, really. Scotland Townsend's basically said when he took over the job he wanted to play the fastest rugby on the planet, well, Japan are going to try and match you for that. And if the conditions are right, we could be on a 35-35 shootout here. It could be fantastic stuff. So it's just a warning really to Scotland. I still expect them to qualify, but of all the teams, I think Japan really could bloody your nose. And if it's going to be anyone's, it's going to be Scotland's, I think.
After placing a bet on Lemeki top try scorer 300-1 earlier today, that's what I wanted to hear, Mark. That's what I wanted to hear. If we're looking at bets in these markets, is there anything you strongly fancy? I mean, you've kind of given some kind of guidance of where you think the value might be. Is there anything you'd actually be betting on yourself, Sully, here?
No, I don't think so. I think there's going to be plenty of opportunities in the pool games, even correct myself for that one, to actually kind of get involved. If you have a kind of a certain feeling like Mark there regards Japan, I mean, like look at headline. I think you're probably looking at Japan are probably going to be a 9-point, 10-point underdog in that Scotland game. Obviously, there's a lot of rugby to be played in between that time scale, but I think you could be looking at Japan there for a bit of value. I mean, the way teams will focus to beat Japan, I know definitely this is going to be Joe Schmidt and the Irish band, is to keep it tight and make it, a 10-man kind of game and absolutely take them on up front in the set piece, the rolling mauls, the scrum time. But Scotland, you see, I just don't see where they have that strength in their top 8, in their forward pack. And that's where you take on Scotland. And in turn, Ireland will take on Scotland in that sense, because this Scottish pack, yes, 1-8, their first 8 aren't bad, but you can absolutely get at them in scrum time. And, they have some really good players, like Hamish Watson and Johnny Gray. But I honestly do believe that, you can get a Scotland there. And like Mark said, that's Scotland's game. I don't really know if Scotland can play that kind of 10-man rugby, because even Finn Russell at 10, the ball goes out to him. He's no interest in kicking for the corners. He wants to get his back line moving, and they're great, exciting games to watch. But yeah, if it's a dry day for that fixture, I'd love to see what the total is.
So possible lay of Scotland here then is where we're looking, maybe.
Look, you're not going to lay them. Yeah, probably lay them in the qualifying market, but obviously they're 4.7 to win the group. I can't see them winning the group. I'd struggle to, and we'll get onto this one on Friday, but I'll struggle to see them cover the spread against Ireland as well. So yeah, maybe Mark is probably right. If there's anyone going to kind of cause a shock, it could be Japan, and you just never know with Fiji in Pool D. But Japan is probably the only one that you may be having a look at.
Yeah, should we move on to the top tournament try-score?
Yes.
One of my always one of my favourites of the year. Always end up gubbed at the end, but
because normally you only have about 16 bets on these. You have one winner.
I had Milner Scudder and I forget who else I had last year. 2 in the top 5 last year though. So, but never managed to hit. Always hitting the bar, never quite getting there. But yeah, you're right. You spread your money around. It's bankroll management, I believe they call it, Sully.
This is the Grand National. This is essentially the Grand National Rugby Union betting. Top World Cup try score. Right, let's have some bit of a look at the market here, right? Obviously, 9.5 is your current favourite. Sebu Reece, Rico Annie at 10.5. No surprise to see the All Blacks there. Jacob Stockdale, 13.0. Chelsea Colby at just 13.0 also. 14.0 Johnny May. 14.5 George Braid. Lots of All Blacks up here. And Nkosi, another Springbok at 16.5, and then Pimpy, small but shorter, 15.5. 15.0. How many of these Springboks have you backed, Alan?
2 at the minute. 2 of them so far. Considering going in on the third rigger as well, but no, there were bigger prices a while ago. But I think some of the value's been squeezed out of those South African wingers once people figured out there's only 3 going on the plane to Japan, so most of them are going to play against the minnows. I mean, generally you find whoever wins this scores most of their tries in pool games, right? Yep. So, I mean, with that in mind, kind of, Mark, where are you looking in this Grand National market, as Sully says?
Well, I'm glad you guys enjoy it, because I don't relish this at all, because the equivalent in football terms is much more easier, because there's more pool matches here, there's bigger mismatches as well. I mean, we've got that second guessing selections from the big teams against these minnows, so I find it really, really difficult. I tried to look through previous trends. Interestingly, none of the last 4 winners scored in the World Cup final, none of which were bigger than 20-1 either, but at least one 33-1 shot or bigger placed in the last 4 competitions as well. So there's a bit of variety there. No try scorer, top try scorer scored fewer than 6, but no scored fewer than 8, or more than 8, I should say. So you're looking between 6 and 8 tries. 11 of the last 13 reached the semi-finals. 2 of those reached the quarter-finals. Only 8 of the last 13 were from New Zealand, and 8 of the 13 scored 3 or more tries against Tier 2 teams. So, yeah, for me, I'm focusing my attention on Pool A and B to start with. Pool A, you've got Russia, who will be absolutely dreadful, and Pool B, you've got Canada and Namibia, who will be appalling, and they're up against the 2 leading favourites. So it makes sense to focus on Pool B for me, the South Africans and New Zealand players. I've looked at Geordie Barrett, which I know you probably think the 2 of you might frown upon, but because he's not a first choice All Black, he's very versatile. He can play most positions in the back line, fullback really being his preferred. But I wouldn't be too surprised to see him on the bench in the bigger games. Should start at least one of those games against the lesser lights as well. He's got 8 tries from just 12 caps and only 8 starts as well. He's around 50 to 1. That's a bit too big for me, considering he could hack up with a hat-trick easily in one of those games or bigger. I did look at Stockdale because his finishing ability is outstanding, but I don't think he'll play against Russia. Similar sort of situation with Darcy Graham at Scotland. So I went to South Africa, looked at Cheslin Colby, was really keen on him, but his price has been smashed in a lot. So I've gone for Mpepe, who I think Colby's footwork is absolutely magnificent. He's going to really light up the World Cup. Made a huge impact in France and for the Springboks over the last 12, 18 months. But I think you've got to go for the price option here. So Mpepe's just a bit bigger. He's got 8 tries in 8 games. I don't actually expect South Africa to hack up with a huge amount of tries compared to, say, the All Blacks. I think the All Blacks will really cut some of these teams to shreds, whereas South Africa might kind of just get their business and work done early doors and kind of just settle out for the game. But they'd be the 2 I'll be looking for. But to be honest, it's not a market I absolutely relish.
Yeah, I mean, the New Zealand is tricky, isn't it? Because there's so many versatile players in their back line. They're trying to sort of pick the selection for some of those minnow games is just really tough, and it's a bit of a lottery there. So I mean, Sully, with that in mind, what are you looking at any Kiwis in this, or are you looking elsewhere?
I'm probably looking at one Kiwi, and just because I think he's a small bit of value because he's 3rd out of the Kiwi wingers or the All Black wingers, then it's George Bridge at 14.5. And the reason being is because I do believe that he's probably slightly ahead of Rico Ioane in the pecking order for that 11 shirt. I think Severis is nailed on at 14, such as his form coming out of Super Rugby, and they're both Crusaders. I mean, like, Rico Ioane hasn't done much in the last couple of months to justify being in ahead of George Bridge. And Bridge also is probably, obviously, like Mark said, you've got Geordie Barrett there who can cover 15 as well, but Bridge can also be an option there at 15 if they want to rest Smith for, the Namibia and Canada games. And it is very hard to tell in that because we just don't know the teams and what they're going to play there. And we're at the speculation stage. But with these markets, I mean, as much as Mark said he doesn't like it, I don't really like it either because I never have a winner. I just have to pick something. I just have to pick something at a really big price here, just like the Grand National. So that was one at the smaller prices. Johnny May as well, but the problem there is, they have 2 tough group games, and like Mark said earlier, they're not really going to have games where they're, is he going to play against Tonga? And even then, Tonga probably roughed them up for 40 or 15 minutes, and it might be an absolute cakewalk. So way down the list, I'm looking at 100 to 1 shot, and the French scrum half, and my favourite scrum half in World Rugby right now, Antoine Dupont, is absolutely electric. And yes, they're in a tough group where they're playing England and Argentina, as we have mentioned already, but they've only got 2 scrum halves. So even if they start Baptiste Saran in the Tonga, and what's they got in that group? Where am I missing that? But against the other minnow in that group, he'll come off the bench, and in the last couple of minutes, he's a guy that might just get a couple of tries. He's 3 or 4 to his name already in about 15 appearances. He's absolutely lightning behind a scrum that's going forward as well, and at a top class set piece. He is a guy that I will be looking at there. And one more, I've been kind of looking around for hookers of really strong mauls, and South Africa are probably one that would have struck me there. Malcolm Marx, currently their starting hooker on Saturday, is a 46.0, but I'll go for his reserve, Bongi Ombanambi. I didn't pronounce that right. But he's 121.0 at matchbook. And again, he does tend to come on in the second half, and he's actually quite good in the loose. And, you know, they get that rolling maul going from 5 metres out that line out. He may be one that might just sneak in there. And I do suspect he will start against Namibia and Canada. So that might be just one of the third. But yeah, I think in all honesty, if you're backing something here at 10 or 11 to 1, you want your head checked.
So, I mean, yeah, for fans of the smell of burning money, some South African second choice hookers in the top try scorer market sounds like the way to go to me. Should we take a couple of questions from Twitter before we wrap up the best bets? Ireland are value at 12.5, already matched at 5 on some of the exchanges. Currently being penalised, recency bias and perception of poor form. Why do you think they're so big?
I can't believe you're making myself and Mark answer this question. Two proud Irishmen that we are. It's I get the sense with them, you know, if everything goes right, everything clicks, they have the potential. Look, they've beaten New Zealand twice in the last 4 or 5 years. They've beaten South Africa in their last 10 appearances or last 10 contests 6 times. But everything just seems a bit off since that game in February in Dublin, you know, where England absolutely thumped them. And I think if you figure out how to stop the Irish like England did there, you very much can kind of beat them. I haven't seen a plan B or a plan C from them yet. There's a lot reliant there on Sexton, you know, staying fit, because obviously Carberry comes in and he's not quite fit. And, you know, I just get the sense that all is not completely well there. I think they're the right price now. People are getting a small bit carried away after that November win over the All Blacks, where they were going into 5 to 1. That was taking the piss. In all honesty, they're the right price now. And obviously, look, they get through their quarter or their pool stage. They would be playing either South Africa or New Zealand. So that's a tough one. I mean, you know, in that stage, if they're playing New Zealand, they're probably looking as an 8 or 9 point underdog, maybe 6-7 against South Africa. So it's going to be tough from there. I think they're the right price right now.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, maybe pulling one of the other questions here. Someone asking if Australia a decent outright bet. You know, Sully touched on them as you know, a potential bet to make the final market. Kind of, what's your views on both of those two, Australia and Ireland, and the outrights? Would you advise people to stay away?
Yeah, I'd stay clear of Ireland. I think they're the right price, as Sully says, just because of the way the draw is. You know, having to play New Zealand or South Africa at the quarter-final stage is not ideal. Sexton nor Murray's been the same since 2018. Performances seem to have dipped, and Schmidt confirmed he was leaving as well. There's doubts over hooker, Rory Best, 37 now. And then there's line-out issues as well. So, you know, I also think there's a few teams in this competition who could basically beat Ireland up, South Africa, England. I'd even put Wales and New Zealand in that sort of scenario as well, where the Irish reliance on the one-out passing isn't going to work as well as it probably has done in the past. They're so reliant on the kicking game, low penalty count, eliminating the errors as well, and execution. If they're a few degrees off any of those components, they're in trouble. As for Australia, I think they're in the softer side of the draw if they get over that game against Wales, which is obviously a huge help. But the Fiji game is a potential banana skin there. I mentioned the form going into 2015, and they managed to pull it out of the bag. I still have doubts over them. Obviously, Michael Checker only just survived a review of his performance in December after the worst set of results for 60 years. As Sully mentioned earlier in the recording, there's doubts over the halfback combination. Izzy Folau being replaced by James O'Connor. It is a downgrade, although O'Connor has played okay since he's come back in. I love Karevi and Korobetti as well. They've got power, they've got pace. Hooper and Pocock, I think both of them have to play. They're going to be more competitive in the front row as well. But I just not sure the conditions out there in Japan are going to suit their play. They've all like to get a kind of open and play a bit more expansive style. And if you look at their traditionally, really, not just this year, but you know, it goes back a few years now, they do give away too many penalties, silly errors as well, a little bit too weak in defence as well. They're kind of giving up around 25 points per game on average over the last couple of years. So for me, that's a red flag, really. So whilst I think they could go well, it's not one I'd be considering.
Yeah, I mean, there's one interesting point you pulled up there, which is the conditions in Japan. We haven't really touched on that much. We'll just touch briefly on that now. It's definitely a topic we're going to be coming back to when we're looking at some of the match markets, specifically on the totals, which I know is always a market that Sully loves to get stuck into. But I mean, is there anything specifically about the conditions we're expecting there? Kind of high humidity, not exceptionally hot, but certainly a lot hotter than a lot of these teams are used to playing in conditions they're used to playing in. Is there anyone that particularly favours or unfavours? You mentioned Australia with the ability to pass the ball around. Kind of what are you expecting from the conditions? Is there anyone that is particularly tricky for?
Well, I think the conditions will favour teams who like to keep the ball in hand, or teams who are essentially better without the ball. So I'd look towards England, South Africa, Wales, possibly even Ireland as well. I think it won't favour Scotland, it won't favour Australia. Because if you listen to any of the coaches, any of the players, since they've been out in Japan or done their training camps, they've all been talking about the humidity, the sweatiness, the greasiness of the ball, basically like playing in wet conditions. And therefore, you need to look at teams who are most effective defensively, but also most effectively with who don't have to play the expansive style, who can look towards the more physical players. I think the schedule is also quite key in some of these games where teams have got certain rest periods or less or more to travel with fewer days rest. But the only thing about the conditions which really kind of stood out to me, which really surprised me actually, there are a few stadiums with roofs or domes. I'm not sure how regularly they're going to be used, but just weirdly, if conditions are going to be, especially for the opening weekend, apparently very wet, very windy too, with typhoons on the horizon as well. But if games aren't able to go ahead in the group stage, the rugby authorities are just going to deem it a 0-0 draw, which could have huge ramifications on the pool outcome.
Unders.
Absolutely.
Knockout matches will be rescheduled, but for a pool stage game, if that's one of the big two teams playing each other, or sorry, I should say one of the big two teams in each group playing one of the minnows and ends 0-0, that's
wow, yeah. Yeah. I assume they're going to do everything in their power to avoid that scenario, but yeah, I mean that would be
hilarious,
mind-blowing. I mean, so what's your kind of sense on this? Would you?
Yeah, I mean, look, I suppose the interesting thing is that there's 4 of those stadiums have retractable roofs, but there's one of them they don't even want to use. It was apparently too expensive. But there was just one thing I've kind of noticed with the Super Rugby, with the Sunwolves, when they've been playing. They play some of their games in Singapore, and they play under a certain, inside a dome sometimes in Singapore. The name of the stadium escapes me, but people are always presuming that those totals, I've seen them when they're playing South African teams or Australian teams or New Zealand teams, whatever, they've been like mid-60s, 65, 66, and it's not factoring in the humidity of the greasy ball. I mean, yes, you're inside. Yes, it's probably, 40 degrees outside or whatever, but you have to factor those things in. That, you just can't keep on flinging the ball around the back line when it's, that slippery. Obviously, it's been well reported in the news outlets that teams have been, using baby oil and shampoo and conditioner and whatever, melted butter on the balls. But I mean,
you get very lonely, don't you? So
you do, of course. But you can only simulate so much, and I mean, you've got to go out there and do it. And it's going to be exceptionally interesting to see where these totals open up this weekend, because if there is this wind, that obviously has probably as much a factor as any rain or humidity or greasy ball. So it will be very interesting. But I think just from a betting perspective, I would kind of hold fire as much as you can, because you can look ahead at 2 or 3 day weather reports and they can be very off by the time kickoff comes around. I've got burnt on that stuff before, where you're expecting. I mean, even I think it was an Ireland and Scotland game recently in Dublin, one of the Six Nations, that Joe Schmidt all week was told it was going to rain, and they planned for rain tactics, box kicks, keep it up the jumper, and it was the nicest day that ever hit Dublin in February. So it can go that way, and I think you're better off holding your fire as close as you want to kick off, because in all honesty, these totals will open late enough anyway. They won't be out 2 or 3 days in advance unless it's the World Cup final or maybe even the quarterfinals and semis. So hold tough. There won't be massive moves on them anyway. I could be totally wrong here, but if the total opens up at the weekend for South African and New Zealand, and it's low 40s, mid 40s, I think it'll be pretty solid. And you can still probably get a bit of value on the under if you wait close to kickoff time.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that rugby markets don't always adjust enough to the conditions.
They never have because there's only so much. It's not like US sports and football betting where there's massive syndicates. You just don't have that with rugby union betting. So you can kind of, yes, you have a lot of good sharp punters, rugby punters. We have plenty of them at Matchbook, but there aren't the big kind of syndicate moves that you would see in other sports.
Yeah, it's definitely one we're going to be keeping a close eye on as we do match by match previews for sure. And it's an interesting one for me because I've not seen a lot of rugby in Japan. I don't think many other people have as well. I don't think a lot of the people saying these markets, betting into these markets, really have a great idea of what conditions are like over there. So I think there's going to be a bit of a learning curve. I think going through those first few games, as you say, and definitely watch with interest. Even games you've not got a betting interest in, I would definitely keep an eye on and see how it's affecting the pre-match spreads and how things are working out, just to get a read on how things are going there.
We're not going to talk about it on the weekend pod because it's on Friday, but could I tempt you on Russia plus 41.5 against Japan?
No.
I love this Russian angle. They've lost their preseason game. They lost by 80 points to Italy. They lost by about 40 points to Jersey, who were fourth in the English Championship. Jersey. Well, what a day trip it was for those guys to head from Jersey to Moscow for a game. Connacht absolutely trounced them as well. That line's jumped 10 points, Mark, in the last 6 weeks.
They conceded 13 tries to Italy in August, 33 clean line breaks, 49 missed tackles as well. They're basically a mid-table second division Six Nations team. So,
yeah. It's such a pity we're not doing a special bite size for that one on the Friday morning. But a lot of people, by the time they watch this, they'll know the results. So yeah, we will wait and see what becomes of these pesky Russians.
Yeah, I'll leave off the last question, which is from R. Howley in Cardiff about how to lay off $6,000 against England. But right, let's move on to our best bets. Let's wrap up here. Mark, let's come to you first because we've heard a lot from Mr. O'Sullivan in the last couple of minutes. Let's not overdose. Talk us through what's your best bets for the Rugby World Cup outrights? Of everything we've talked about, where's your hard-earned going?
Yeah, there's nothing majorly sexy here, so I can only apologise. Really, it'll be more from a match-by-match basis. But there's 4 bets that I did pick out, which I have got involved with. South Africa to win the competition, as we've talked about already. South Africa to reach the final. Group B to be the winning pool from the World Cup, and Geordie Barrett to be top try scorer at 50-1. I think you've got 2 quite short ones there, 1 medium, I guess, and 1 long shot.
A nice mix. Sully, where's your money going?
South Africa, Boka 5.4. Get your money down.
Is that it? That's it. Nothing else for us.
Anything else? I'll have some for the pool games. I do like a couple of those. I do like at Mark's angle the 1.7 shot with the Group B as the winner. That seems pretty good. But yeah, I just still believe there is some value with South Africa at 5.4, which is currently an industry best price here at Matchbook. There's my plug.
Always a pro right till the end. Right, that's it. Thanks for sticking with us, and thanks for joining us today for this. As we say, there'll be 7 more of these to come, focusing in on the matches as we go through the tournament. There'll be a lot of change. There'll be a lot of reactions to the conditions and the way teams are playing. So make sure come back, stick with us. We'll guide you through the rest of the tournament. But for now, thank you very much, and we'll see you again.